Welcome to the Cheating Secrets channel. We hope you enjoy today's story.
Andrew and Courtney Simpson, though childless, were happy in their marriage for over 10 years. Having children was something they both wanted, but they waited until they were secure in their careers and could financially support a family on a single income. Both of them were in their 30s and were successful lawyers. Drew was a civil litigation attorney, while Court specialized in contract law for a well-known local firm in their hometown. They finally reached a financial level that allowed them to attend their first national convention of the American Bar Association. This was something they had both eagerly anticipated. During the long drive to the hotel headquarters, where they had booked a table for the event, their main conversation topic was about having a child. They both agreed that the time had come, but Court confessed that she was anxious about the prospect. It was at the board of directors reception on Wednesday evening that everything fell apart. The evening started well, with both enjoying the atmosphere and the company of their fellow lawyers. It was late in the evening, after the official part of the reception had ended, and there was more drinking, dancing, and loud conversations, when Drew noticed that Court was in a playful mood. This was definitely not a bad thing, as it always led to a marathon sex session at the end of the night. Courtney was a beautiful woman with a lively character, though somewhat cunning and always flirtatious. Tonight was no exception. Drew, on the other hand, was more calm and reserved. This was very unusual for a litigation attorney. At social gatherings, Drew typically blended into the background. He genuinely enjoyed watching people and observing how they interacted. If someone started a conversation, Drew would immediately participate actively. He simply rarely initiated conversations with people he didn't know. When his wife ordered her fourth mojito of the evening, Drew ran his hand along the inside of her stocking-clad thigh. He felt the warmth she radiated with his fingers. That evening, he had spent an excessive amount of time on the dance floor with numerous partners and eagerly anticipated returning to their hotel room. When Drew finally got to what he often called his property, he realized that there was nothing left on her. His eyes lit up when he met the dark green eyes of his wife. There was that smoky, sensual look in her eyes, and he was ready to take her right there in the club. She leaned forward, revealing a large part of her thigh and her ample chest. She let out a low, approving whisper and purred, "I want to have fun tonight, darling," without breaking eye contact. "I can see that. I feel it too, baby. Let's go to the room. Look around, darling. We've never been to this city before. Do you see anyone familiar?" Drew reflexively looked around. "No, I don't think so. Why?" "I want to have fun tonight," she said, with an unmistakable emphasis on I. He was stunned. He undoubtedly understood what she was implying. But, although deeply shocked and gravely hurt, as an experienced trial lawyer, he instinctively knew not to reveal his true emotions. Drew couldn't imagine where this was coming from. The only potential warning sign he could point to was his wife's reluctance to have a child. Yet she had just agreed to do exactly that. "I understand, but what about our relationship?" She ignored his question. Though not a trial lawyer, she knew how to interrogate witnesses and understood the importance of not letting the opponent distract her. She sighed and held his hand firmly. "Have I been a good wife? In the 15 years we've been together, have you ever had even the slightest doubt about my love and complete devotion to you? Since we became exclusive in our first year, name one time, one instance, just one. I know I flirt, but have you ever doubted me when you saw me doing it?" One might think she had just made the simplest rookie mistake a lawyer could make, asking a question to which she didn't know the answer. But, in truth, there was no mistake, because she already knew the answer. "No, there weren't. I never had any doubts about your commitment to our relationship until 30 seconds ago. Why now?" He resigned himself to the inevitable. It was surprising how quiet she seemed in the middle of a nightclub with flashing lights, loud music pounding through their chests, and a DJ surrounded by over 200 cheerful lawyers. Amidst all this, they spoke in normal voices but didn't miss a single word from each other. "I told you I'm ready to have a baby. I just want this weekend for myself. I deserve it. And on Monday, I'll throw away my birth control pills for our future." She pushed his hand away, leaned back in her chair, and crossed her arms over her chest, emphasizing her ample cleavage and signaling that the conversation was over. "I understand. Have you already chosen someone?" He, of course, already knew the answer to his question. "Yes," she replied quietly but firmly. "All right, one last question. What compensation are you willing to pay?" "What compensation?" "Don't play dumb with me. You're a contract lawyer. You know what compensation is. What are you offering for my consideration? What price are you willing to pay?" Now he was close to losing control. He was stunned at how quickly his life was falling apart. "Darling, the only price we're talking about here is your ego. I know that by doing this, I will hurt you, and I will spend the next 30 years making up for it. This has nothing to do with what we have. It's Wednesday evening, and we don't have to leave until Saturday morning. I'll return to our hotel room on Friday evening, and we can start working on having a baby. Everything will be fine." It was over. 15 years together, more than 10 years of marriage. The end of our family that will never be. No children's laughter, no birthday parties, no first days of school, graduations, brides, or grandchildren bouncing on our knees. She had just admitted to deliberately hurting her husband. Premeditated harm, if you will, and she didn't even flinch. For some reason, it didn't matter to her. "All right, I'm going to bed. I don't know when I'll see you." He turned and walked away without looking back. He heard her calling after him, but he no longer cared what she had to say. "Well, that went better than I expected," Courtney thought to herself smugly. "What was that 'I don't know when I'll see you'?" She didn't think about it any longer and focused her attention on her target. She looked him in the eye and smiled seductively. She stood up and sidled over to him. She couldn't remember his name, but she remembered how he had pressed his aroused body against her thigh when they had recently danced some dirty dances. The incredible truth was that until that very moment when she felt this man against her leg, she had never considered being unfaithful to Drew. She suddenly made a decision that would break her life, something she simply couldn't fathom. Drew didn't know how he managed to get back to the room. He vaguely remembered someone asking if he was okay while he was in the elevator, but his head was spinning, and he was in mild shock from what had happened. Everything seemed so unreal. Just moments ago, he was fantasizing about the beautiful love he and Court would have, and the next minute, his marriage was over. He wasn't sure how long he sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall, but eventually, a plan formed. He knew what he had to do and forced himself to move forward. Home was only 3.5 hours away, but Drew knew he had a couple of days to get everything done. He realized that for Courtney, he wouldn't exist for the next 48 hours. He had enough time to do what needed to be done. He understood that the first thing he needed to do in the morning was report their joint credit cards as stolen. If he was lucky, some hotel maid would find the purse Court left in the room and take it without reporting it. Drew didn't plan to touch anything his former wife had left in the room. He also thought that if the hotel maid took the purse, it would give him at least until Tuesday. The actual divorce would be simple and clean. They lived in an immaculate state. No kids, no house, no shared property. They had always kept their finances separate and contributed equally to the expenses. They earned about the same amount of money, so the divorce was the easiest part. Starting over was significantly harder. Drew quickly packed his suitcase and was ready to walk out the door. He paused for a moment, considering whether to leave her a note, but then he changed his mind, stepped into the hallway, and headed towards the elevator. The sound of the automatic door closing echoed down the corridor, signaling that he was closing the door on his previous life. On the way to the lobby, a thought struck him, and he stopped at the front desk to check if everything was in order. "My wife is in the car. We have an emergency at home, and we need to leave immediately. We left the keys in the room." He watched as the officious clerk pressed a couple of keys, and he realized the cards were deactivated. He couldn't help but smile slightly as he walked outside, knowing how much trouble Courtney would face in a couple of days. 7 years later, Drew sat in a hotel restaurant, sipping iced tea, and waited for his food to arrive. The seminar had been really interesting, promising to be a valuable learning experience that would help him in his family law practice. He noticed that the date on the newspaper someone had left on the worn vinyl seat was almost 7 years to the day since his final divorce. Wow, time flies. At first, He didn't realize he had said it out loud, and slightly embarrassed, he looked around to see if anyone had heard him. He hadn't thought about Courtney in a long time. Although his divorce was relatively simple, the experience made him realize how unfair the so-called no-fault system could be to the party that was wronged. Honestly, while the system existed because some people couldn't handle their own problems, behaving like children and trying to create chaos for the other party, it had to intervene and sort things out for them. These were the cases where the old axiom, "nobody wins in a divorce," truly held true. In any case, it was the motivation Drew needed to switch his specialty to family law. The truth, as he discovered, was that most divorces nowadays happened simply because both parties had made up their minds. There were few disputes, and both sides worked to resolve their situation as quickly and painlessly as possible. He handled any case that came his way. Still, he really enjoyed dealing with the relatively rare cases involving infidelity, where he suspected that the spouse of his client was trying to tighten the screws on his client. His thoughts were abruptly interrupted by a voice he still recognized. "Hi, Drew, how are you?" He looked up and, incredibly, saw her. He couldn't have been more shocked if he had been hit with a cattle prod. "Hey, Court, believe it or not, I was just thinking about you. What are you doing at a family law seminar?" "I'm not attending. I'm here on another matter. May I sit down?" "Of course, I'm sorry." He gestured for her to sit. "I'm really shocked to see you, so you'll have to forgive my manners." "Wow. I really don't know what to say." She sat up straight and spoke in an angry tone. "You never even talked to me, Drew. You never responded to any of my attempts to contact you. You never said a word to anyone in my family again, including my mother, who, as you know, adored you. You didn't even show up at any of the hearings. You just left. I had nothing to say to you. 15 years together, and you couldn't even say go to hell before you ran away?" I walked up to our porch that Monday evening and was served divorce papers before I could even get in the door. When I finally got inside, there wasn't a single thing in the apartment that reminded me of you or our marriage. "I see. You destroyed our marriage with an incredibly selfish act, and I'm the bad guy? If that's all you have to say, just leave me the hell alone." "Drew, I'm really sorry. Just get out of here, Court, right now." He was flushed with rage. Most of the restaurant was now staring at them. She stood up and stumbled away in tears. At that moment, a whirlwind hit Drew. It was the chattering twin sisters and their younger sibling. They piled onto him at full speed, as they usually did. His wife was walking right behind them. She was laughing and smiling, but her smile quickly vanished when she saw his face. Her gaze darted to the rapidly retreating figure of Courtney. That was her, wasn't it, Drew? He could only nod his head, as he was occupied with the 3 children. Without saying another word, his wife, Celia, quickly ran after Courtney. Drew watched as she caught up with Courtney. They began a conversation that ended with Celia helping Courtney to sit down. They must have talked for at least 10 minutes. It looked like they exchanged contact information, then Celia hugged Courtney, and they parted ways. Celia returned to the table and grabbed their youngest so that Drew could corral the twins into a corner. Drew's eyes and mouth were wide open when Celia sat back down. "She's coming to our home in a couple of weeks, and you two will talk. I mean, really talk. Don't say anything, just nod if you understand." Her tone left no room for argument. So, he just nodded and began fending off the 2 little monsters on his lap, who were now his life. Later that evening in their hotel room, after the 3 musketeers had fallen asleep, Celia looked at him and asked, "Is there anything you want to say or ask her?" He took a deep breath and quietly said, "For the first few years, I wanted to, but maybe my pride wouldn't let me. But now? No, I have nothing to ask, and I'm glad I didn't give her that chance back then." "What? You're joking, right? This can't be serious?" "It's very serious, Celia. If I had allowed her to talk to me back then, she might have said something that would have made me reconsider. But if that had happened, I would never have met you, and our 3 children wouldn't exist. No, I don't need to talk to her, and I have no regrets." She hugged her husband and showered him with kisses. "You know just what to say to a girl, don't you, baby? But that poor woman needs to talk to you. So the least you can do is sit and listen. I will, but really, what's the point? All she's going to say is how sorry she is. If I ask why, she'll say she doesn't really know, and so on and so forth. But I'll do it for you, and maybe it will help her find some peace. But why should I care? Drew, be sweet right now. Maybe I can't pinpoint it for you. But wouldn't you have liked to yell at her for a few minutes after seeing her? Maybe that's what will close the past for you too. Maybe you're right, but even excluding you and the girls from the equation, I realized before I met you that my life was better without her. The divorce made me reassess my life and what was important to me. Oh, sure, I went through the usual emotional turmoil that most people experience when a marriage fails. But that failure forced me to take a hard look at myself, something I would never have done if she hadn't acted so foolishly. Drew paused to think and catch his breath. They say that the greatest successes can come from our biggest failures, and I firmly believe that to be true in my case. I'm much happier practicing family law now than I ever was practicing civil law. Sometimes I feel like I'm truly helping people. I know I don't make as much money, don't drive a Beamer, and don't live in a lakefront condo. But I'm happier than I've ever been in my life. Now, what about her? Maybe you should ask her that question? What's the point, Celia? I have no regrets about where I am right now. He paused and then continued in a voice just above a whisper. Maybe it's not true. I do have one regret. I should have talked to her mother. She was really a sweet lady. I know she loved me, and I liked her. Since both of my parents have long passed away, she was like a surrogate mother to me, and I left without saying a word to her. Celia had nothing more to say. She had hoped that somehow meeting would be as good for Drew as it would be for Courtney, but now she had doubts. Was she imposing this on Drew, and would it only serve to dredge up a past he no longer cared about? But could she stop it? As it turned out, Celia didn't have to do anything. The meeting never happened. The night before Courtney was supposed to come to town, Celia's phone rang after midnight. At that time, she always dreaded answering phone calls, fearing bad news, but she reflexively answered. On the other end was a clearly upset woman. Celia? This is Angela Jones, Courtney's mother. I need to speak with Andrew. The ringing phone had woken Drew, and Celia handed him the receiver. It's for you. Andrew, it's Angela. Courtney took her own life yesterday afternoon. This statement was followed by the sobs of someone in indescribable pain. I'm so sorry, Mom. I don't know what to say. Oh God, this is my fault. Now Drew was crying too, but he had no words. Celia, who had heard everything, clung tightly to her husband and was now openly weeping, feeling that somehow she was partly to blame as well. Andrew, it's not your fault. She had many issues, and she brought them upon herself. After the divorce, there were many things about her you didn't know. She left a sealed letter for you. I hid it from the police. No one knows about it except you and me. What do you want me to do with it, Andrew? Just keep it for now and let me think about it. Can you do that? Of course. Andrew, I need you to be with me. Can you come? I'll be there as soon as I can, Mom. I'm going to bring my whole family. I want you to meet them. I know you'll love them. I'll call you back tomorrow, and we'll make a plan. Is someone with you right now? You shouldn't be alone. Yes, my friend Joyce is staying with me. I can't wait to meet your family. I'll talk to you tomorrow, and the call ended. Courtney's memorial service was held 7 days later on a cold but clear autumn day, and as promised, Drew and his family were there. Only a few people attended the service. Despite being a very competent lawyer, Courtney had no real friends. She was cremated, and her ashes were to be scattered in the park that she and Drew often visited when they were dating. Angela said it was the happiest time of Courtney's life. The loss of her daughter by her own hand was an almost unbearable burden for Angela. However, she quickly grew to love Celia and especially the three girls. By the end of the week, the girls were calling her Grammy Angie. Angela told Drew what had happened to Courtney's life after he left. He was shocked by the revelations of risky behavior, substance abuse, and mental health issues that followed the divorce. She even explained why Courtney was in the same hotel as Drew. She had disappeared with two men she met at a nightclub and was gone for more than a week. When she returned, she had bruises on her body. According to Angela, this was not unusual. Courtney was also close to losing her partnership at work. He was astonished at how one bad, sudden decision had sent Courtney's life spiraling out of control. The night before Drew's family was to return home, he and Celia had a long conversation and came to some decisions. The next morning, Drew pulled Angela aside while Celia kept the girls occupied. "Mom, we need to talk about a couple of things. First of all, Celia and I want you to move in with us. There's nothing keeping you here anymore. You don't have to decide right away, but we want you to seriously consider it. We'd love to have you with us. If you decide to, we'll be there to help with the move. Please, think about it, okay?" "Oh dear, that's so kind of you. I promise I'll think it over carefully, but I'll miss her so much." She broke down again, and Drew held her as she tried to calm down. Once she was composed, he continued, "We need to talk about the letter. I think the best thing we can do is take the letter and throw it, unopened, into that fireplace. That letter is for you, Andrew. I know, but I'm never going to read it. If you give it to me, I'll burn it. However, I want to give you the chance to keep it. I don't know about you, but I want my memories of Courtney to remain as they were before the divorce. Your memories should also be of that time. And I'm worried that if we read the letter, we'll remember her as she became after the divorce. I don't want anything to do with that damned letter. I'm giving it to you. If you decide to read it, the only thing I ask is that you never, and I mean never, mention anything about it to me." Angela was shocked by his response, but began to understand Andrew's reasoning. She desperately wanted to remember her daughter as she was before her actions broke her life. Maybe the letter contained sincere remorse and acknowledgement of how painful her decision was, but maybe it contained only more pain. Andrew had told her about his encounter with Courtney a few weeks ago. What if Courtney had only more anger and guilt to unload on Andrew? Courtney had not been in the best mental state, especially since she had faced Andrew. Angela was torn.
Thank you for being with us and listening until the end. If you found it interesting, please subscribe, give us a like, and leave your comments. And we'll see you on the Cheating Secrets channel.